Hey everybody, I'm Sierra.
And I'm Ben.
And welcome back to another episode of The Unsolved Couple, where every week Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs into true crime.
Unsolved mysteries.
Okay, babe. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. Before my ADHD kicks in and I get distracted, I wanted to tell you about some fun places that we have a few new downloads. Okay. Elkhorn, Nebraska. Very exciting town.
I like Nebraska.
I don't know if I've ever been there. Albany, New York. Heyo. McMinnville, Oregon. Kind of close to our old stomping ground.
Do you think Albany, New York, isn't that the capital, right? Isn't that where the governor? Do you think it's the governor?
It was obviously the governor.
It's the governor.
Yeah.
All right. I figured.
Yeah. And then this one was in Finland, and I don't know how to pronounce it.
Don't even try. But whoever it is, shut up.
First off, Finland, what's up with that? Simaa.
Here we are. We're back to the
This
spelling.
is the capital of Finland. So this is showing my terrible public school education.
Geography.
Because I did not know that this was the capital of Finland, but I thought that was cool.
That is cool.
Alexandria, Virginia. And this one just says, nice Alps. That sounds like it could be a euphemism for something.
I was right about to say the same thing.
Fort Worth, Texas. Leading Tickles, Newfoundland. Newfoundland. What is with some of these names? That's funny.
Leading Tickles. Huh?
Leading Tickles.
Question.
Yes.
What does it take for you to start listening to a new podcast?
Okay, well, hold on. I still have a couple more on these.
I didn't know. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No.
All right, keep going.
We have one on St. Thomas Island. I bet that's a beautiful place. Whoever you are, I'd love to come visit. Do you have a guest house? West Jordan, Utah.
All right.
Okay. Greenville, Ohio. Corvallis, Oregon. Corvallis, Oregon. West Jordan, Utah.
You just said that one.
Did I say that one? Okay, they get 2 shout-outs.
All right.
Wiley, Texas. Dearborn, Michigan. And Oxford, Florida. Spring, Texas. And Hillsborough, New Hampshire. And Cornersville, Pennsylvania.
Hillsborough, New Hampshire, huh?
Yeah.
I grew up in Hillsborough, Oregon.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey-o. We had a handful. I mean, it's been a while since I've done that, but we've gotten some new downloads. So either our 10 listeners are traveling, or some people are stumbling into our podcast.
We got like 15 to 20. Okay.
Okay. Anyways, what does it take for me to start listening to a new podcast?
Hold on. Did we ever get the Antarctica download?
No, not yet. So we'll see.
All right.
What does it take for me to start listening to a new podcast? Probably a recommendation from people who already listen to the same stuff. I've got a couple of friends who listen to a lot of true crime. Okay. And I follow several true crime podcasters on social media. If they give a recommendation, I'll check it out. I'm into it. Why?
I'm just curious.
I thought you were leading us into a good plug.
No, I have
about that's how you listen to. That's how you find new podcast. Speaking of that, if you like this podcast, recommend it to other people. I thought you were marketing 101. I was going to be very impressed.
I am not a marketer. Never have been.
Well, I'll use that as a time to make sure you're following us on social media, Instagram and TikTok, Unsolved Couple Pod. We have a Facebook discussion group where we talk about every episode and talk about the cases that we cover. And that's Unsolved Couple Podcast Discussion Group on Facebook. We're on YouTube as well. And yes, the number one way that I decide to start a new podcast is by recommendation. So please share our podcast with a friend, share it on your social media, share one of my silly stories that I make a fool of myself making all the time. I have had people pull up to me in the parking lot as I'm sitting there waiting for one of our kids, and I'm talking to a phone, and I probably look like a self-absorbed idiot.
You look like an influencer.
I'm not at all. Do not claim to be, but I do it for the people. So if you find one of those funny, please share them. And then the other thing you can do, obviously, to support us is to please leave us a 5-star rating and specifically a review.
A good review.
Well, that's why I said 5 stars.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. I want to start. We have a handful of them. I want to start reading them on here because some of them are good.
Well, I think all of our reviews so far have been good.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
We're still waiting for our one hater.
No, don't put that into the universe. Take it back. It's back. Okay.
I took it back.
All right. So today we're recapping season 2, episode 5 of Unsolved Couple. Not of Unsolved Couple. Good night. Unsolved Mysteries. I tried to take an afternoon Sunday nap and it didn't work. So my head is feeling a little disjointed. Everyone knows that feeling.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So,
Well,
okay.
Let's ease it. How was your week?
Oh, my week.
Come on.
It was my birthday.
We got to ease into
We
this.
do got to ease into it. It was good. I had a good week. We had some good food. Ben booked me a massage. We went out dancing. Funny story about dancing. We went on a Thursday night because we country swing dance. So it can take up a little bit of space on the dance floor. And we had tried some new moves that that are a little bit more advanced, I guess, and you need a little bit more space to do so. And so we thought, my birthday was on Thursday, that if we went out on a Thursday night, there is a live band there, that it probably wouldn't be very busy because on Friday and Saturday night, the country bar we go to is packed. Yeah. And the dance floor is not very big. And so we went there on a Thursday night, and the first red flag should have been that there was no cover charge on a Thursday night.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common, though.
But we walked in, and when I say that Ben and I were the youngest people there, no joke, the video that I took of the crowd dancing on the floor is almost comical. It is not just like older. You and I are now 40. We're not 20-something-year-olds walking into a place.
We're not young.
We are not young. So when we say that we walked in and the people there were significantly older than us, it wasn't even like people that were in there. It wasn't even like early grandparents. This was not your 50, 60-year-olds. Everyone in that place had to have been 75 plus. Yeah. Easy.
It was busy. I mean, that's clearly their night to go, and we
missed the memo for sure. And Ben literally turns to me and says, "I wanted you to feel young for your birthday, so I brought you here." I thought that was a good and the music they were playing was terrible, but just because it was not made for our generation.
Well, the band was just not very good.
Yeah,
and I will say maybe part of the problem was we just got back from Nashville less than a week prior. Where the music was
phenomenal,
incredible.
Yeah.
I think we talked about it last time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, the music was just not very good.
Yeah.
But we had a good time.
We did. It was fun. So. Okay, how was your week? Do you have anything to add?
My week was fine. I'm getting pretty excited. Me and the kids talked about it on the way home from church today.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Baseball season is starting.
Baseball season.
By the time this comes out, baseball season should have started. We're only a couple weeks away. Spring training is underway.
We talked about one time about doing like a sports podcast, but it's just me trying to either A, understand sports, or B, me trying to explain sports to people based on my understanding.
We should just do a recap
or assumption of what I think, because I cannot tell you how many times where I say, wait, doesn't it work like X? Yeah. And you laugh at me. And not only is it not even close, it's never been a thing. Like I thought for a long time, was it the Super Bowl? I can't remember if that was it. Or no, the Thanksgiving football game. I thought it was just for funsies.
Just for funsies.
I thought it was just like a tradition, like how we get together on Thanksgiving and play football, and you just kind of all come together and you just play together, and it doesn't really count for anything. You keep score because it's televised, but it's just tradition. So these two teams
Which that's never happened, and no one ever does that.
I assumed that at some point years ago it accidentally lined up with Thanksgiving, and they thought, let's keep this tradition going. And so the same two teams met every Thanksgiving for the fun of it and played a game.
No.
That was my assumption until about a year ago.
No.
Yeah, so.
But I am excited. I love baseball, and it was so fun. We were driving home, and all three of the kids were just ecstatic about baseball season. And they're like, Dad, are you going to buy the MLB pass so we can watch all the games? I'm like, of course.
Yeah, we need more people to follow our podcast so that we can get the MLB streaming platform. Okay, well, we're going to jump into this because we do have 4 stories to cover today, and I don't want to keep anyone here longer than they want to be for the people, family members that are listening to this out of obligation.
You do know they can pause it and come back, right?
They could. You are correct.
It's not like once they start, they're in it and they got to stay there.
Committed.
That we've now held them hostage for the next hour and a half or whatever, however long this is going to be.
Okay. Do you want me to start us off? Right, that's what we talked about. We're shuffling things around a little bit because there's 2 bigger stories and then 2 smaller stories. And if we win it as the show went, one of us was going to get stuck with like a really easy day, and the other person was going to have a lot of work to do.
I tried to give Sierra the more work, but
so
all right, yeah, go ahead. This was a
very
story.
interesting one, and I think in the area of the states where this happened in, it's still talked about to this day. So this is the story of Dale Kerstetter. Saturday, September 12th, 1987 began as a typical workday for Dale. The 50-year-old security guard and maintenance man had worked for 27 years at the Corning Glass Works plant in Bradford, Pennsylvania. The plant made long glass rods for electrical resistors. I don't know what that is, but it seems important. That evening, he left his mobile home in the Lewis Run area and drove 10 miles to the plant. His shift as the weekend security guard went from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Also, side note, they don't specifically say this, but it sounds like he was the only person there.
Yeah, the way they tell it, it seems like he is the only guy there.
Yeah, from everything I read, he was. Plant. It's a massive plant. The fact that there was 1 man and 3 security cameras.
Well, they said it was 112,000
feet
square foot building.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah,
and from my understanding, this plant is still there today.
Okay.
Yeah. So he actually showed up early that night. I read that, relieved the daytime guards, settled in, said goodbye to the few remaining employees as they left the plant that night. And by the next day, $250,000 worth of platinum piping vanished, and Dale was never seen again. Pound for pound, Robert Stacks lets us know, is one of the most precious commodities in the world. It's more expensive than gold. I only learned that. Right. Fact, when we were looking at wedding rings, because I remember we were on a budget, and I was talking to my mom, and she said, you can either have a bigger diamond and have gold or a smaller diamond, but you have platinum. I went with the bigger diamond, obviously, which we were 20-something years old. Trust me, this was not like some, Kardashian rock we're talking about here. Yeah. In addition to its beauty used for jewelry, it's also used widely in manufacturing. After Dale and a fortune in platinum pipe disappeared from the Corning plant, authorities were mystified. Here's the question Robert asks us. Was he an unwilling victim of a robbery, or had he engineered the heist himself? Dun, dun,
dun, dun,
dun. Okay, so now we're going to get a little bit of background on Dale. Dale grew up in Bradford, and except for his years in the Air Force, he lived there his whole life. He had been divorced for 10 years, which oddly enough, his ex-wife is interviewed on this episode. The older lady.
That's his mom.
Oh, that was his mom. I thought it was his wife. Because the way she kind of talks about him, she had a little bit of edge.
That was his mom.
Is his mom.
This title
Okay.
right there.
My closed captions I have on when I'm doing my research, and it covers up their lower third.
Yeah, it does. And I paused it to see, because I thought the same thing. I thought it was his ex-wife. I was like, well, that's kind of weird, but no, it says his mom.
Okay. All right. So, and he had he had 4 daughters and a son that also lived in Pittsburgh. They're also interviewed throughout the
a couple
story.
Of the daughters and his son are interviewed.
So he overall, from his family, so his mother and his sons and daughters, his son and daughters, said that overall he was a really just low-key, down-to-earth. I mean, he lived in a mobile home. He worked this job. He was known to be honest and kind and hardworking. He was very dedicated to his children.
Well, they said he still had a teenage son that lived with him, and he's the one interviewed.
That's a good point. Yes, he has one child still living at home with him.
Well, and did you notice what he said?
He said
his dad?
There wasn't a kid in the world who wouldn't want to have him as their dad. What? Right there, when this kid is talking, I'm like, okay, well, I can already tell you right now, hands down, this guy's not involved.
And he's a good man.
Yeah. And not to say that.
I guess if that's all, if
this is all the information we have,
if my kids say that about me, when
you've done something right.
Then you know what? I've succeeded in life.
Enter the mashed potatoes of this.
Don't even get me started on this freaking guy.
Okay, so personnel manager C. Dale Perry.
This guy's a douche.
He is. Yeah, I don't want to say mashed potatoes because I usually compare that to like garbage human beings who like take someone else's life. But this is the reason why people hated their jobs. Well, this is the reason why people unionize. He is the small-minded individual pucker face that shows up to management and wants to insert his power and dominance because he's a weak-minded idiot everywhere else in his life.
Seriously. Here's the thing. I am with you.
Okay.
This is why people they don't get along with management in jobs, especially big jobs. I guarantee 98%
of us listening to this, when I said it's the person that gets into power and just makes everyone else miserable so that they can flex their own muscles, we all know. We've all worked with that kind of person.
Yeah. I mean, they just belittle the people below them.
Yeah. So he goes on and the very first things he says is Dale is a marginal employee.
That's his first
line out of his mouth. This guy is, this point, this man's being interviewed, Dale is missing. But I'm going to tell you, I looked up the term marginal employee, and I'm going to give you the definition. And then we're going to follow up with a caveat story to this. A marginal employee is an employee who has, quote, poor performance record or attitude. They struggle to meet work basic standards and have fallen well below expectations. Okay.
Mind you, this guy's been working there for 27 years.
Yeah.
And his boss, who clearly is much younger than him.
Yeah. I guarantee got this job because Uncle So-and-so or Daddy Warbucks was in charge of this plant.
Gets on, and the first thing he does is belittle his 27 years of service to the company.
Yeah. And according to Perry, he went on to say he was a slow worker who they had, quote, some problems with. We never get any reports on what those, quote, some problems.
No,
he said some problems with him occasionally. However, he does let us know that a tiny little incident took place, that Dale risked his own life at work, saving half a dozen employees and hundreds of thousands of dollars in property value. So several years before this disappearance, a forklift accidentally rolled underneath the steam of hot, molten glass. Not steam, stream. The glass started pouring down into the propane tank on the back of the forklift, which propane tanks are highly explosive. Dale immediately jumped into the forklift and drove it away from the hot stream of glass. That's a marginal employee for you?
Yeah, that's what he defines as a marginal employee.
Yeah.
I'd like to know.
And this guy's living in a mobile home, probably making barely anything.
Well, I'd like to know what this guy's got on his resume.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to see what he would have done in that situation.
Anyways, we're hitting this guy really hard, but he comes in.
He comes in again. He doubles down later.
Well, he comes in. No, that was a different supervisor that comes in
This
later.
whole company I have questions for.
But he literally just comes in and is
for no reason
horrible about this guy. And
obviously felt entitled enough knowing this was going to be on national television and not caring.
But I can understand. And I'm a little biased because I don't care for. I don't care for bullies. Period. End of story. I've been in management positions. I run my own business. I've held positions of power, and you do not bully people. Period. End of story. You respect people. So, okay, back to the morning. 7 a.m. Sunday morning, September 13th, 1987. Security guard John arrives at the plant. He expects, obviously, to find Dale waiting at the little cubicle to relieve him. Normally, he's right inside the door. However, when he walked in that morning, he wasn't there. John walked into the cafeteria and noticed that Dale's lunch pail was sitting on the table, along with a newspaper. He picked up the newspaper and found all of Dale's keys sitting there. He then opened the pail and found that Dale still had his lunch inside. Later Sunday morning, we don't know how long, Dale's new red Jeep pickup truck was discovered in the parking lot. So it seems like Sunday, no one else is there either, because this has gone on now. He's not there. It doesn't seem like that gets reported. A little bit later, his Jeep is found. And the plant manager's first thought was, obviously, Dale must have been, quote, out drinking and would eventually turn up. Yeah. What? I don't know. You could get me going all day on this, but I won't.
However, by 5 p.m., they can't find this guy. And so they decide at that point to call the police. The truck yields several clues that suggested he had not disappeared voluntarily. His keys were in the ignition. He left behind a full carton of cigarettes. We note later that his daughter lets us know he was a heavy smoker.
She said he was always smoking.
Yeah. An empty holster from his .22 caliber pistol, his day pack. Police learned he was supposed to check in with the main factory every hour after making his rounds. However, that night he did not phone in after midnight. That should have been red flag number 1. However, they cite that a new employee was working at the main factory and was unaware of the protocol, so was not initially notified. But Dale's the marginal employee.
Yeah.
On Sunday afternoon, the sheriff's canine unit was brought in to track Dale in the 112,000 square foot plant. Police were concerned that he might have suffered a heart attack. I love that they're just like now trying to figure out if this guy's missing. But yeah, at his age, being a heavy smoker, it's very possible.
Yeah.
Or if he'd fallen and injured himself. The dog found his scent along his normal route. Then it led to the second floor to the site of the plant's glass kiln, also known as the tank. Although the tank contained valuable platinum pipe, it was not normal on Dale's security rounds. His scent was found at the tank, but he was nowhere in the building, and the woods and a nearby creek were also searched, and no trace of him was found. The investigators next focused on 3 security cameras that monitored the plant around the clock. 4 days after Dale vanished, the manager, Patrick, fully viewed the footage. He was surprised and disturbed, not for the right reasons in my opinion, by what he viewed. The first thing he saw was a masked intruder walking into the guards area at the back of the plant around 10:40 p.m. 10 minutes after Dale relieved Art. So this immediately is upon shift change. The best part is when you think about it, 10:40, he wasn't actually supposed to clock into work till 11. which makes me think this guy was under the impression that maybe shift change was a good time to be. Anyways, that's me putting on my investigator hat.
Or maybe that's why Dale went in early. I don't know.
Oh. Counterpoint.
See, this is the first thing I'm actually. They didn't say this in the episode.
Yeah, this was sorry. This is some side research.
This is the first time hearing that he showed up early to work.
Yeah. When Foley saw the intruder on tape, he was very alarmed. He assumed that Dale had been the victim of foul play and was abducted. But then at 10:45, the footage showed Dale coming in and meeting the intruder, not like a friendly greeting. They don't high five or shake hands. In the intruder in the back of the plant, the two appeared to briefly have a conversation and then showed the two walking together in the plant. Dale was not seen again after that point. About a minute later, the intruder was seen walking alone. And as Foley continued to review the tapes, he saw the intruder go into the tank area around midnight. The intruder began removing the platinum pipe from the tank. At that point, he realized not only did he have a missing employee, but there was a good possibility that they had missing platinum from the plant. Plant officials went to the tank and lifted out the fire bricks that shielded the platinum to discover that several pieces of the pipe were missing and apparently had been cut out with a hacksaw. According to the manager, whoever removed the platinum from the tank had to have been familiar with the plant and everything inside. They knew exactly where to go. It's important to note that this happened late at night so that there was very few lights on in the plant, yet the intruder knew exactly where to go, where to find bags, tools that they would need, and how to go to the tank and move out of the areas correctly, suggested that this might have been someone who had worked previously and or had been involved in somehow. The most perplexing moment in the tapes was the interaction between Dale and the intruder, where they're shown walking together. Is it possible that Dale is being coerced or simply pretending? At one point, he looks directly into the camera, seemingly to be secretly signaling for help. Penny points out that Penny is his daughter, that if he was involved, it makes no sense for him to willingly walk in front of a camera. There's only 3 cameras in the whole place.
Yeah, and in a massive.
Massive. There was a lot of other ways that he could have walked around and no one would have ever seen him. She said that if he'd been involved, that's like simple 101 cover up to try to not do that. However, the other plant manager, Foley, thinks that Dale did everything in front of the camera to flaunt his involvement, as if he were saying, hey, look, I'm taking your platinum and there's not a thing you can do about it. Dude, there is a missing man.
I know, but these guys, both of these managers, man, like
these are the men that would have fought in the Civil War on the South Side. That's what I'm going to say. They think that they are better than everyone around them because they are balding old rich men. Okay. Sorry, I'm fired up.
All right, we're going in place. I'm just saying, the disdain these managers have for their employees.
I bet everyone working there was miserable all the time. Working for these guys had to have been awful.
It's incredible to me. And again, this is why, like, you see in big companies, when there is this rift between employees and management. And it's to this day. And you have employees.
And there doesn't have to be. But,
no,
yeah.
It really doesn't. But the problem is you see people like this and the way they talk about this employee. Again, 27 years. If he was such a bad employee, then why hadn't you fired him?
Yeah.
I mean,
if he was such a bad employee, why did he leave all these people in the plant in danger by not moving that forklift out of the way? I mean, good night, dude.
Well,
I will say, I thought this was interesting. When he's telling the story, and this is where I think 98% of management problems come from. He said, we are taking your platinum. This man who manages this company looks at everything under the umbrella of the corporation that he is also just an employee for as some sort of weird ownership and protection over. And when I think management cannot separate the two, yes, you have more responsibility in management, but also it was like the Hilton manager we had to deal with that one time with the room where they booked us 2 rooms and the guy's like arguing with me. I'm like, you're going to either lose a customer or you're going to refund the $110 room that you double booked.
Yeah.
And he is acting as if this is coming out of his own pocket. This is a tangent, not a tangent, side research. This same plant had a couple of different locations, this umbrella, the corporation. They had several platinum, in this state alone, robberies. I have a feeling that the managers of this operations, all the people in charge of this plant, had 1 old man security guard and 3 cameras. I have a feeling that in then taking any ownership over the fact that they were aware that there was platinum robberies going on in their other plants, that they wanted to hang it on somebody else, regardless of the fact that this guy was missing. And the only way to do that was to make it seem like for 20-something years, he was a terrible employee.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, because they then get into, they do say supposedly.
So this is the other thing I want to tell you real quick. I found it. His ex-wife was noted in a newspaper that Dale was 6 months away from retirement.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, and he has a teenage son that still lives at home. What, you think that he just abandoned his kid?
Well, and his daughter spoke very fondly of him. So I'll wrap this up so we can. But so the police believe at this point there's 2 theories: either A, this man is a victim, period, or that he is the center person of a bold and premeditated robbery. According to Folly, Dale was so this is plant manager again, was a happy trades worker. However, prior to his disappearance, Corning started to downsize and several people lost their jobs. Although Dale was one of the lucky people who kept his job, he was cut out of the trade shop. It led to between a $5,000 and a $7,000 pay cut.
That's a big
pay cut. Yeah.
Then.
But I guess the other alternative is you don't have a job.
Yeah.
In these tiny little towns, a big part of the workforce depends on one factory.
Yeah.
According to his manager, he was, quote, not a happy person. Rightfully so. $7,000 back then, that's a chunk of change.
That's almost $20,000 nowadays.
Yeah. Investigators found no sign of forced entry and no evidence of a struggle. Although Dale's gun was missing, there was no evidence that any weapon was fired within inside the walls of the building. I will also say I read somewhere else that his daughters actually showed up at his at the work many times to either have dinner with him or check in on him. The whole plant, both the security guards that worked on the weekend, were known to not lock any of the doors up. So she said that they would just walk in wherever and look for him until they found him. So these even people wandered around the plant.
Well, they also say in the night video, the masked intruder is seen rolling out a big, large bag on a forklift.
Yes, on a forklift.
And they said, well, that was either the platinum or it was a body. We don't know. We have no clue.
Yeah.
But he's just on one
But Dale
camera.
was there 1 second, and then the next, this masked intruder is rolling out a forklift with a giant bag on it.
Yeah, and he's never seen on a camera again.
I'm going to guess, So although the police throughout the police investigation, they figure out that Dale is approximately $30,000 to $40,000 behind on various payments. Caveat, he just had a huge pay cut. I don't know, right? Including the trailer and the vehicle payments and different bills which had owed throughout the area. His daughter, however, wants people to know that they were all financially pretty well off and in a position to cover any bills he had. He also had stock in Corning, money invested, and he had a 401k. And in his savings account at the moment he disappeared, he had over $5,000.
Which is a chunk of change.
Is a chunk of change, yeah. According to Penny, if he had ever gotten to the point where he desperately needed money, there were many other options to legally obtain it before doing something like this. And one of his friends, like, even kind of said the same thing. He went hunting and fishing with this guy. Said never once did he ever talk about a scheme or, you know what you could do, or wouldn't it be crazy if nothing. However, his manager thinks that Dale was secretly a very intelligent man in a crafty sort of way.
I like that he throws an insult with his theory.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I think secretly he's intelligent because no one actually thinks he's intelligent.
Yeah, and he's been playing the long game for 20-something years.
Yeah. I'm like,
and
wow.
that if Dale isn't the main person involved, then he had an accomplice do it with him. Okay, so Dale's family and friends they want to know what happened. They all are kind of interviewed. Like, if he is involved, they don't care. They want him to come back so they can help him get through this. You know, is he dead somewhere? Was he abducted? They just want to know what happened. And they seem to be the only ones that want to know what happened to their father. Dale's employee, however, suspects that he was involved in the theft and that he flaunted his crimes in front of the cameras. They believed he was involved because he was angry about being cut from a program and he had some debt.
All right.
So,
Update.
Unsolved.
Still unsolved.
Yeah.
Never found his body.
I know. And I'm going to follow up. This is a salty sweet. So first I'm going to give you the salty news. In 1990, Wendy petitioned the Pennsylvania Superior Court to have their dad, Dale, declared legally dead. An attorney for the Corning department or the company argued against this.
Whoa, in 1990, what was that, 3 years after this had happened?
Their position was that Dale was just as likely a participant in the theft, and they refused to turn over any of his pension or insurance money and anything to the children.
Yeah, probably because the statute of limitations hadn't run out
yet. So in December, the courts ruled against Wendy, noting that there was evidence was too vague. Yeah. And they could prove that Dale had met with foul harm. And 7 years had not lapsed in the time yet. So exactly right. So then fast forward to July 2014, Dale was finally declared legally dead. His date of death was listed as the date of disappearance, and Corning, was ordered to pay 27 years worth of interest on this man's pension. Suck it. Like, that's awesome. I know. As well as interest on his life insurance proceeds. Because after 7 years, these people should have turned it over.
Well, yeah, because statute of limitations.
There was nothing that he could have done.
Plus, I do think, I could be wrong, but in most states, you have to wait a certain time period for someone to be disappeared for them. And 3 years is usually not that time. I think it depends on the state. Some is 5, some is 7, some is 10, I think. So I can understand them not doing it at 1990, but whatever the state is, I tell you what, it's not 2014. Yeah. It's not almost 30 years. So, yeah.
Yeah, that judge was like, oh, okay.
Because this company's been holding his 401k and his pension.
They've been making money off of this because that is investment money for the company. That's money
sitting in their account. So, yeah,
compound interest over 20-something years is a crap ton of money.
Well, his grandkids will be taken care of.
Yeah. So I just want to note that in February 2019, Mudrock, a nonprofit organization, actually requested to analyze the documents, specifically the videotape of the security footage in the Pennsylvania's Right to Know Act request. The Bradford police asked for the original surveillance tapes to be released. After several requests, the police finally sent the tapes to Mudrock, which upon viewing, unfortunately, the tapes were in such poor condition, they were barely able to be used. A poster in the Unsolved Mysteries sitcoms online message board, which we've referenced a handful of times, it did help clean up the videotapes to make it more watchable. But according to anyone that has seen that, it seems pretty obvious that this was not like a chummy interaction with each other. So it's unsolved, but I really think, unfortunately, due to the missed phone call 1 hour things, and then no one even seeming to like care to look for this guy or shut this plant down or investigate because they just pinned it on their employee. They
just thought the worst of their employees.
Yeah. That there was, what were the police supposed to investigate at that point? I think it really hindered the investigation.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's too bad. I thought maybe that platinum would show up, or maybe his body would show up.
And they looked
eventually.
for the platinum, but
sure
it's not as easy traced as maybe some other things that are
I'm sure
stolen.
wasn't as regulated back then.
Yeah, for a while, and this man is no longer alive. There was a former employee who happened to come up with a handful of cash shortly after this disappearance and could never really, quote unquote, prove where he got the money, but he could also never have enough evidence to be charged with it. He moved to Florida shortly after and was pretty vocal about having a bunch of cash on hand.
$250,000.
Might want to hold on to that one. He didn't, though, ever face any charges or come to anything, and he ended up passing away. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that believe that's the likeliest suspect because he had worked there. And then, unfortunately, I guess there's several, like, big furnaces and, like, gasoline chambers of some sort. There's, from what I read, not to get to it, there's a lot of places to dispose of a body within the plant that leave almost no way to ever recover it and no evidence ever behind it.
Well, it is clear that size of a plant, the person clearly knew their way around. It was clear they had worked there.
Yeah, 100%. All right. What do you got for us, babe?
All right. I'll be quick on this one, people. Okay. I got a mob boss for you. And no, I'm not just bringing up the mob, but we really do. May 23rd, 1987, we got the FBI, we got the ATF, we got the DEA. They're all staking out the motor inn in Connecticut. And guess what? They run in. They bust down the door. And they're looking.
FBI, we have a warrant, federal warrant. Open up.
We're looking for this guy. Where is he? They're looking for Salvatore Michael Cariana.
Mm-hmm.
He's nowhere to be found.
Nope.
It looks like he's been gone for weeks.
He gone.
He is gone. So Salvatore Michael, he is a known mob boss. He's a narcotics smuggler. And he's been on the marshals. Oh, yeah, the marshals were there.
Yeah.
FBI. They got everything.
They got everybody.
We got the whole alphabet there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And he's on their top 15 most wanted.
Yep. Not the top 10.
No.
Top
not
15.
Quite there. Top 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what was his drug of choice that he sold, Ben?
Marijuana.
Mary
Jane. But he's been missing. They've been looking for this guy since 1984.
He's a slippery sucker.
Yep. We know that he was part of the New England mob. I don't know anything about the New England mob. I'm not.
And we're not getting into it right now.
I'm not a self-proclaimed expert on the New England mob. All right. But Salvatore, he's been doing crime ever since 1954. He first got arrested in 54 for armed robbery and, firearm possession. That's what I was looking for. But in the late 1970s, he started getting into narcotics smuggling with the Raymond Patricia family, which is the New England mob.
Okay.
Okay. So he was supposedly facilitating bringing in, they say, $40 million worth of marijuana throughout the years.
Man, marijuana's really dropped off in value.
Well, back then, $40 million.
Yeah, well, it was still illegal back then, so yeah.
But so they would come in, and how they explained it is he brought it into the warehouse, and then he
was the middleman
it and sent it out all around, right, and got it sold. He was supposedly pretty high up in this
organization.
Okay. But in November of 1983, he was arrested for drug trafficking and charged. He was actually facing life in prison. with the charges, the federal charges. I guess he was charged with drug smuggling. Like,
this was during the war on crime, or not the war on crime, the war on drugs, right?
Hopefully, there's always a war on crime. But yes.
Yeah, but the war on drugs was kind of a bust. But yeah, this was so the federal charges were bonkers.
Yeah, so as like a kingpin or something. Bail was set for $500,000, but guess what? He had enough money to post bail.
If we didn't make it sound so cool, kingpin, maybe we would get these people that don't want to be in it. Like, what if we called it the Tic Tac Club?
The Tic Tac Club. I don't know. Get out of here.
He's a Tic Tac. He's part of the gang, and he's the Tic Tac. No one want to do that. But you tell me I get to be the kingpin, and I'm like, okay, that sounds fun. Yeah.
How can I get that title?
How can I get that job?
All right. So he sets bail April 2nd, 1984. He's supposed to show up in court. Guess what?
He doesn't.
All right. He's gone. Law enforcement's been looking for him. And the best part...
Wow, that was so much money and connections this man was given bail, but whatever.
I know.
I don't know why anybody acted surprised when this happened.
I know. Like, let's set a bail for this mob boss who's made millions and millions of dollars off of drug smuggling. Hey, do you think you can come up with some money?
Yeah, do you think he could have maybe a contact out of the States, possibly?
Yeah. The best part is they talk that he was so ahead of law enforcement that he was using, they say, do you notice what they say in the episode?
No,
He was using computer technology.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he was a fancy kingpin.
Yeah, he was smarter than them. Best part is they say they raid his house, which is a fortress in Massachusetts. Yeah. And he's got all this. They find
security, guns for days.
Yeah. They find an ID in there of an alias he's using. So they start tracking that, and they track him to a place. I can't remember where. I didn't write it down. Mm-hmm. But within like hours before he's about to get caught, he catches wind and slips.
Okay, that means he had someone on the inside.
Exactly.
Someone in the federal government was on this man's payroll.
Yeah.
Also probably why he was able to even be allowed to post bail.
Yeah. But anyways, then on that May 23rd, 1987, they tracked him. They were able to finally track him to that motor inn, and they go in, and he's gone. And they tell us they find all kinds of stuff in there. They find newspapers that are weeks old, moldy food.
It's clear he hadn't been there for a long time.
They say there was a suitcase full of money and a gun. Did you notice what was in the closet?
Why can't I ever find a suitcase full of money?
What was in the closet, Sierra?
I don't remember.
A sawed-off shotgun.
Oh, I want one so bad.
You're so weird.
I didn't know they were illegal for a long time, but that makes me want one just a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a sawed-off shotgun there. There's all kinds of stuff that make them think. So this is the agents, the federal government's theory, that he was killed. That he was a contract killing, supposedly. Or he faked it to make it look like
he's either dead or he faked his death and ran away.
But
this is the best and brightest, you guys. What we got?
They think that he faked it because then they'll stop looking for him.
But they said they have no evidence that he faked it.
Yeah.
And that he also must be super smart because they're trailing or tracking several of his contacts, and he hasn't reached out to anybody. Nope. They found his van in the impound lot. I guess it was at a bus station or something, and the police had impounded it. They find it, but okay. So what's our update?
So, anyways, this is where Robert Stack comes. It's like, here's his picture.
Anyone seen this guy? Yeah.
This is your early days of America's Most Wanted. Mm-hmm. Okay. Update. Never found.
I didn't think so.
So I did read. This mob was big. Anyways, I read a newspaper article from 1990 and I'm gonna botch this.
Okay.
But and I don't know all the names. Couple people with the family were arrested. Okay. And they decided to cut deals.
Shocking.
And they spilled the beans. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, listen, we were involved in all this. They admitted to being involved in the death of a guy. Okay. This guy was brought to them by Salvador.
Okay.
They met up with him and they take him to this house, and Salvador pops the trunk and this guy's in it dead. And supposedly this guy had been having an affair with Salvador's wife.
Oh.
And he was an associate. He was a drug runner for Salvador.
The drug runner was sleeping with the kingpin's wife?
Yeah.
Not even the kingpin, the head honcho guy.
Was Salvador, the guy
Salvador
himself.
Is the missing guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Got it. All right.
So anyways.
Bad news bears, you guys do not hook up with the kingpin's wife. That's like the one thing that's off limits.
Anyways. They take him to this garage. There's 4 or 5 guys there. Salvador pops the trunk, grabs the body. They throw it in the ground, pour lime on it, and bury him.
Yep. That is a classic mob move, yeah.
So these 2 guys lead the police around. They find the garage. They dig
Take
it
the
out.
body out?
They dig it out, and they find 3 bodies there.
Oh, whoopsie.
They identified one as that guy. I can't remember his name.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They think that one of the other 2 bodies is Salvador.
Okay.
They think the mob killed him because the heat was too hot for him.
He'd become a liability.
He'd become a liability. He could have told too much.
He could have done what those people were doing. Yeah.
And they killed him. They never identified the other 2 bodies.
Okay.
This is a theory, and we've got nothing else to go on. But it is multiple people from that mob family have disappeared, never to be seen again. So
if you think Kingpin sounds fun, kids, don't join the mob. It's a dangerous game.
It really only ends one of 2 ways. Prison or dead.
Yeah. So unless you're like the daughter of the head of the thing or whatever, then because the original people arrested were family members, right? Who were totally fine to cut deals.
Yeah.
They were allowed to spill the beans on like the other random stuff. Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's it. That's my only story.
Okay, so I've got an interesting one for us. Had you ever heard of the ghost lights in Texas before?
I have just heard this here and there in passing, and I've heard this place. What's it called? Where in Texas?
I want to keep calling it Marfar, but
Marfa.
Is
Marfa,
that Marfar?
Texas. No, not
like
Marfar
chicken?
Nope, Marfa, Texas.
Marfa.
I thought I've heard some, but I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I never heard of anything at all like this. Okay, during the 1800s, cattle by the thousands were herded by one of my favorite people, cowboys, across the plains of central Texas. And once again, Ben is right on cue with about an hour in having a coughing attack on Mike. Thank you.
I think I'm allergic to this.
Thank you.
I'm allergic to this podcast.
All right, everyone give Ben a round of applause for his coughing fit every time. Okay.
It's strong water.
Yeah, no kidding. So, in the plains of central Texas near... Now, I just want to say Marfar.
You can't say it's not Marfar.
It's Marfa.
Marfa,
the town
Texas.
of Marfa. One evening in 1883, during a roundup, a 16-year-old cowhand named Robert Ellison noticed a strange glow off in the distance. He and his partner saw a ghostly, shimmering light off in the darkness. It appeared to be only a few miles away near the base of the Shinati Mountains.
Try again. Just give it a go.
I think that's how you pronounce it. Shinati. That's it. Shinati Mountains.
That's it.
And it hovered just a few feet above the ground. Okay, we get story number 1. According to, this is still the first guy. According to this man's daughter, he and his partner first thought that the lights were probably a campfire from Native Americans or other travelers through the area. However, they kept seeing them every night for over a year. The lights would bounce up and down, back and forth, and had no explanation. Other settlers also told Robert that they had seen the lights, but when they would go to investigate them, they wouldn't find ashes or any evidence of a campfire or an inhabitation around the area. So, fast forward to 1916. Haley was an 18-year-old when she witnessed the same phenomenon. She and several others had decided to come to Marfa to attend to some business. As she and her companions were talking and driving down the road, they saw the lights over the Shanatsi Mountains. They stopped their car, got out, and watched the lights. Haley knew that it could not have been any kind of car lights. I believe at the time, lights on the front of your car weren't standard in everything. Haley and her friends first thought that it was a campfire again. There was Native Americans in the area, there was Mexicans and ranchers who all traveled through this area. However, they noted that it didn't act like a campfire. As they watched, the lights started moving. The girl, Haley, said that it was particular and she had never seen anything like it before. So that's when they decided to call them ghost lights. She tells us, well, it couldn't have been anything but a ghost, hence the name Ghost Lights. Fast forward again, 1943. The mysterious lights are seen again near the Air Force Base in the area by two airmen. When they first saw the lights, there was no vehicle traffic at night. Fuel at the time was being rationed, so lights of any kind were very uncommon. He said when the moon was out, it was beautiful, but when there was no moon, it was crazy dark. One night, he and another airman saw the lights in the distance. The lights were totally foreign to anything that they had seen around the Air Force Base. They were so curious after seeing the lights that they tried to locate the light source, but were unsuccessful. When they inquired inside the village of Marfa about the lights, residents said, yeah, sure, we've got the lights. What else about it? They seemed to be like, who cares?
Yep.
It seemed as if in this town at that time, this was just one of those weird things that everyone knew about, but no one cared to try to figure out where it was coming from. They just accepted it. Yeah. 1973, geologist Pat Kennedy and Ellenwood Bright witnessed two cantaloupe-sized balls of light come barreling out of the southwest towards them. They said claimed almost 200 miles an hour.
I'd like to know how you clocked that.
One sped off towards the abandoned at the time Air Force Base, while the other slowed down and hovered about 200 feet away. They said the lights seemed to be, quote, daring them to chase after them, and seemed as if it possessed some kind of intelligence. So this guy's thinking, aliens?
Here we go.
I'm not going to get into it. The lights have been continuously seen near the area, usually about 10 miles to the east, called Mitchell's Flat. They only appear at night and are random at any time of the year. They have been seen under multiple different kinds of weather and are usually seen a handful of times all year long. Surprisingly, witnesses are not feeling frightened by the ghost lights. In fact, they just regard them with some sort of affection. So again, several of the residents are interviewed, and they just are like, who cares? They're just there. We like them being there. We don't care to know the answers.
I like the residents. They are like, whatever, man.
It was a bunch of really old people that were like, so what? We have these lights. We like them. No one cares to figure it out. There's several myths around them. What's the point in trying to... They like the mystery.
Yeah.
They were the people that watched Unsolved Mystery, for sure. They feel, like one lady said, it brings a touch of magic to our day. And you know what? In the world we live in, that's awesome. So, some legends around the light claim that it's a ghost or of the lantern of an Apache Indian chief who was killed by Mexicans when he refused to give up his desert home. Some Native Americans from the area thought that the lights were fallen stars, and others believed that they were wandering ghosts of the Spanish conquistadors. Others believed that they were dancing devils. So, there's all this lure around it.
All right.
Okay? People have tried to explain these in the past. There was even a wild one at one point that was it possible for fireflies to land on jackrabbits. Or no, jackrabbits with glowworms attached to their tails. I mean, that seems wild.
That.
Yeah. So we get the interview of Kirby. He's a journalist now, but as a child, he grew up in this area. And he said that this was his Loch Ness monster. He was always curious. I know. I
liked how he described
I wanted to include this story because I thought it was very endearing. He grew up in this area. This was the lore in his neighborhood, and he really wanted to figure out what it was. And he's a journalist. He's curious about things. So him and his brother believed that the reason no one had ever gotten close to the lights was because they were using motor vehicles, such as airplanes or cars or jeeps, and that if they had set out on foot across the desert, they could, quote, sneak up on them.
Spoken like a true kid.
I know. So one night, Kirby and his brother and a couple of their friends grabbed all of their backpacks and put all their investigator gear in front of it. This seems like the makings of a perfect movie that we would have watched in the 90s. This is
like Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah. So they go out in the desert and they hike around for over 4 hours.
You know what? That is dedication.
I know.
Right
I
there.
love it. And it was the typical light, like a rainbow, right? Every time they felt like they could get close to it, it felt like it was getting farther away. They felt like, and so he kept saying they felt like the lights were teasing them, that the lights were aware that they were there. It just goes again to the lore of the story. But they said it's hard, the desert, especially because a lot of it's so flat for so long. Distance is really warped.
You can't judge.
You can't even judge necessarily the size. They said at times it looked like it could be the size of a cantaloupe or the size of a giant tire.
Yeah.
And especially if it's dark, you cannot tell how far away these things are. So enter Unsolved Mysteries. They come to this town in 1989, and they bring 3 scientists with them from a local observatory and university to conduct a formal investigation. And we see this. They're setting them up. They've got the investigators.
They show us a video.
They make this diagram for us that at this point now through these mountains, there is a highway that goes through. Obviously, it wasn't there in the 1800s, but it is there now. And they put markers up so they can note that if they see a light in this range, that it's a headlight.
Well, I think they said they put 2 people.
They put 2
at the edges of the highway so that they could then communicate if there was a car on that highway or not.
And then we see actual footage of these lights. And I will say, from what I saw, and you and I have been, we've all seen headlights off in the distance or campfires off in the distance or whatever, right? These lights were like this ethereal sort of like humming glow, and they blink out and blink in, but in a faded way. It did act... I was kind of surprised as we were watching this, like, oh, this is a real phenomenon. As far as, we don't know why, but there are people of science and technology recording this in real time that you can hear them communicating. They're just as kind of, I think, caught off guard and maybe mystified a little bit.
Baffled by it.
Yeah. And so after reviewing all of the evidence, the chemistry professor says that they know for certain that the lights are there, which is establishment number 1. And they know by the way they behave that they believe these are of natural ore and this is not man-made. This is not someone out there with flashlights or whatever. However, they don't know exactly how to explain them. He didn't believe that they were car lights. And he is certain that people are seeing real activity in an atmospheric sort of way, even though he can't really explain it. They come to the conclusion that it's possible that the lights might be reflected starlight or luminous gases produced by small earthquakes. However, again, that's really hard to test. They're not sure. And all they can say for certain is that it is a natural occurring phenomenon and they can't explain it at this time. That's it. That's where it leaves us. Ready for your update?
Yep.
All right. To this day, this is still unresolved.
I know.
Over the years, a handful of highly educated individuals have gone out to research the phenomenon, as they are still happening to this day. In fact, I read that the city won a grant from the state to build an observatory, like a highway vista spot that people could safely park and stand there and watch and observe these. So this is still happening.
I saw there's like benches there and stuff where people can sit and watch it.
Yep. I know. I wonder how far of a drive it is from us.
I don't know. I don't know where Marfa, Texas
I don't know either. So there is a couple of updated theories from some of the people that have gone out and studied them. One scientist said that this was obviously caused by car headlights of a nearby highway, but that the strange movements were magnified or shimmered because of a superior mirage. A superior mirage occurs when objects appear higher than their actual position and can make distant objects, even those below the horizon, appear to hover in the air. However, he does want you to note that that doesn't explain the reports of the lights seen in the 1800s. Okay? So another one said that, again, that it was likely lights from a car, but that the atmospheric conditions of the land outside were unique. The conditions warped and distorted the lights coming from the highways they traveled across the land, and by the time the lights reached the viewing area, it looked weird. White or floating orbs. Another speculation is that the lights may be results of high-energied particles or plasma that rain down from the inner and Van Allen radiation belt. Although most of the plasma was absorbed by the Earth, some people think that it may be repelled by a layer of volcanic rock in the area, and the plasma shoots around acting like lights seen by witness. The scientist that has this theory has not been able to confirm his theory. And the last theory I found is that the lights are results of indigenous rocks under Mitchell's Flat that creates a phonoelectric charge, which is electricity produced under pressure by solid matter. Again, has not been able to test that theory. And to date, no scientific theory fits every aspect of this phenomenon perfectly. There you go.
All right. What's your thoughts?
They're clearly happening.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, this was something I didn't ever experience until I was an adult with kids. So when our kids were younger, they had these these blankets, those fuzzy ones, right? And they had fuzzy pajamas. And I remember one time, and it could be that we live in a really dry climate, I went to wrap one of the kids up or do something, and I saw a spark.
Yeah.
I had never seen that. It freaked me out, right? And we've all had static electricity charge, right? And you get zapped. But if it happens in a pitch black room,
you see the spark.
You see the spark.
Yeah.
Now it's quick, right?
Yeah. And
these lights, that's, I think, what's odd about it. It's not a quick flash in the pan like that. And so I wondered, I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a geologist.
But I guess I'm asking, you don't think it's like aliens or...
No. I think this is, so Willow of the Wisps.
Supernatural.
You've heard of Willow of the Wisps that are in Ireland and stuff like that? Gas is being released from a marshy area that create this orb float. It looks like an orb floating of light. It has I don't know, we don't have those as here, but they're legends in...
Okay.
Celtic stuff. I wonder if there is below the earth, because this whole continent at one point was underwater of some sort, if there's something that's being released through the rocks. I don't know. I'm going to guess it's something like unto that we just haven't been able, and I don't think
the scientists haven't discovered.
Or there's probably just not a huge desire. It doesn't seem like the town is trying to figure it out. It doesn't seem like everyone there is growing a third arm, and so there's some radioactive thing. It doesn't seem like anyone really cares to figure it out.
Well, it's clearly natural.
Yeah.
Right? It's not man-made. It's been there for over 100 years, so...
And it's still happening today.
It's the natural earth and some type of scientific thing happening that's causing it that they just don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I don't think that since it's not hurting anybody and it's not going to solve a problem of energy, this is not going to be how you power cars or whatever. I don't think there's a lot of time, resources, or energy being dedicated to try to figure out what it is.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not aliens.
It's no, and I will say, other than the one guy that kind of alluded to that a little bit, I mean, I think the people that mentioned that it having intelligent were the people that believed that this was a spirit or a ghost of some sort that was being mischievous.
Yeah.
And I think, if I lived there, I'd probably lean into that lore too and want to believe it. But from the outside looking in, I'm going to guess that it is, likely just something along those lines.
It's a ghost.
You think it's ghost? Yeah, the one time that you're like, you guys, this is it. We have evidence of the ghost.
I'm in the same boat. I think it's some type of scientific, some type of thing that is happening that obviously, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but
occurring.
You already said it, and it doesn't matter. No one cares.
All right. I'm excited for So I only watched this part of this episode once, and I didn't do any research on it because I was kind of excited to learn the update with the people.
All right. This is a wild one. All right. Hold on. Let me get my notes open here. Stand by. Stand by to stand by. All right. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Our story starts. This is a sad one.
Yeah.
Let's let people know that we got a murder. November 18th, 1987. Jay Cook and Tanya Van Kulenborg. Okay. I don't know if that's how
they're Canadian.
Or they're Canadian. Okay. I actually, in my research, they say she's 17 and he's 20. But in my research, a lot of it said she was 18. She had graduated high school.
Okay. Then I feel less uncomfortable about this age gap because we're going to find out in a minute they're going on a trip together and the parents are chill with it. And I don't know if Canada's like way more laid back, but most parents, even today, I think would be like, oh, my 17-year-old daughter is going to go to another country, even though it's just across the pond or across the border, with her 20-year-old boyfriend. Okay, that sounds like a good idea, but that makes more sense that if she's graduated from high school and is 18, that makes more sense.
So, and Unsolved, they say she's 17, and 2 or 3 different articles because there's actually a ton of
there's a ton about this. Yeah.
They say she was 18.
Okay. All right.
I never got her birth date exactly to find out, but anyways, and one said she'd already graduated high school.
Okay.
Anyways, they've been in a 6-month relationship, and they decided they're going to go away for a night on their first trip together. I don't care if my daughter was 18 and just graduated and she wanted to go away for a trip with her boyfriend. Not happening. But my daughter is never going anywhere with anyone ever. She will live.
Our daughter at dinner last night was giggling with her. So our daughter's 13 with her friend. We went out to dinner and she brought her friend with her, and they're 2 adorable 13-year-old girls. And they are, giggling so loud. And I'm like, you guys, what are you guys giggling about? And they're whispering back and forth to each other. And I hear my daughter say, I know, he's so fine.
First off, who says that? And that, let me just explain to you. I have 1 daughter, 2 sons, and 1 daughter. When I heard her say, he is so fine, my heart went, break. Just break. That's just that.
Ben instantly his mood changed for the rest of the dinner. But anyway, they were talking about some 15-year-old singer. I don't know. They're really bummed that his concert is sold out in Phoenix. So
thank goodness.
Anyways, sorry, continue.
Anyways, they're going away for a weekend. Okay. They take the ferry from Victoria to Port Angeles.
Twilight Zone.
I've been
Not the TV show, Twilight, the book.
I've been on that ferry.
That is where Jacob and Edward live.
Okay. If you bring that book up anymore, we will end this. I will put this down and we will end this episode.
I think we should do a movie marathon and watch those movies. Because watching those movies nowadays is hilarious. The acting in it is so bad. The CGI effects are terrible.
No. Okay. I am done talking about that. Do you understand? All right. So they take a car ferry because there's actually two I've been on. I've actually been on both. So, anyways, they take a car ferry from Victoria to Port Angeles. And then they said they thought they took the 4 p.m. ferry. Then they are seen twice going down Highway 101. At 8 p.m., they're seen at Hoodsport and at 9, Allen. Then they are thought to have been on the car ferry from Bremerton to Seattle. Mm-hmm. Okay? They don't know if they got on that ferry, but I know why they thought they got on that ferry.
Okay.
They made it on that ferry.
Okay.
Okay? So they were supposed to return the next day.
Yeah.
Okay? They didn't. The parents start getting worried.
Yeah.
Start making some phone calls. Then when the day after comes and they still haven't returned, they start really calling. They knew something.
They dig in.
Was wrong.
Yeah.
And let me just preface. I will tell this how Unsolved Mysteries, because the way Unsolved Mysteries tells us, it is super vague.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they jump a lot, and they actually leave a ton out.
Okay.
A ton out. We then get interviewed from the Skagit County Sheriffs. They find several days later, they don't tell us exactly, but I find out it was November 24th.
Okay.
So we're now 6 days later. They end up finding Tanya's body off the side of a road. And the sheriff gets on and says, yes, she was found murdered, partially clothed, raped, and but there was nothing else with her.
Yeah.
There's no van. They're looking for this van, and nothing.
They found
the only other thing they found along with her was, they call them wire ties, but we all know them now today
zip
as
ties.
Zip ties.
Yeah.
So nothing else there. Okay. The next day in Bellingham, Washington, been there too.
I know. We actually looked at moving there one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful city.
Beautiful, beautiful city.
They found the van. And in the van, they find blood. Found some other things, but I found this all out
More zip
later.
ties.
More zip ties. 2 blocks away, under a patio of like a saloon, or not a restaurant
like
of some
saloon.
sort. They find more zip ties, keys to the van, Tanya's driver's license, a half a box of ammo, and plastic gloves.
Yeah, so someone dumped everything underneath there.
So at this point, they're interviewing. They interview a different sheriff from a county, and then a detective from Seattle Police Department.
Yeah.
Because now this case is,
well, it's across multiple things, and
counties, cities.
Even technically, these are Canadian residents, so this is crossing all kinds of jurisdictional issues.
They think, is Jay a suspect? He hasn't returned. They found Tanya's body, but they're interviewing his dad, and he's...
Yeah, and I would say the parents spoke very highly of
both of them.
Of both of them, on each side. No one believed. They had to ask themselves, was Jay involved, because he's nowhere to be found. Jay's parents are still holding out hope that he's alive somewhere. And, Tanya's parents are hoping that Jay's not involved, but that, he's like, this is a terrible situation.
But technically,
this young couple goes off for a day, and now they're gone.
Gone.
And one of them has been found not just deceased in a little bit of a way, but in some kind of way.
Yeah. And so, but technically, they've only been dating 6 months. You don't really know
that's
anyone.
true.
All right.
I mean,
okay.
Even after 17 years, you might not know somebody.
Okay. All right, dear. All right. But then the next day, on Thanksgiving Day, this is terrible.
Do they celebrate Thanksgiving in Canada?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe. I mean, it was still bad news, but maybe it wasn't.
So, and I looked it up. They don't tell you the date. November 26th. Jay's body's found under a bridge, and they say he's obviously been murdered.
He was beaten up, right?
He's
badly.
been beaten and strangulated.
Yeah.
Strangulated. And again, more zip ties.
Yeah.
So
this guy's got a thing about zip ties.
Yeah. They bring the sheriff and I think it's the detective for Seattle.
Yeah, and he gives us
PD.
some information as to maybe why we're not getting a lot of answers
He
or a
just
lot
says,
of information.
He goes, listen, without telling too much, we think this guy is a career criminal. He's done time in the prison system, and
we can't tell you why we think that, but
so they give their thoughts. They think that they had gotten on the 1020 ferry from Bremerton to Seattle, and they thought he had maybe come up to them, said, they're young, they're naive. He says, hey, do you mind? The theory they put out is maybe he came up and asked for a ride.
He somehow got into their vehicle.
Yeah, maybe he asked for a ride.
Yeah.
And they were kind, helpful, and they gave this guy a ride.
Yeah, whoever this is possibly played on the fact that they were just nice people.
Yeah. And they thought, this guy probably has definitely done this before.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't have gloves and zip ties on you if you aren't planning something.
So, anyways, Robert Stack comes back, tells any information would be great. The only thing that they do know is Jay's jacket and her day pack, Tanya's day pack, are missing.
Okay.
So, if you see anyone with these items, his jacket was black with like colored stripes down the shoulder and sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
That. This is the most horrific part of, well, not the most horrific. The murders is the most horrific. But this makes this person the worst human being ever.
Yeah.
Christmas comes.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about this.
Christmas comes.
Yes.
And both the family members get a Christmas card with morbid details about the death of their children.
Yeah.
And wishing them, and over the several years,
monster.
19 total cards.
Always around holidays.
Around holidays are sent, and they're postmarked from Seattle, New York, L.A. But they had a handwriting expert analyze it, and they are all from the same person. 19.
Yeah, they show us a picture of one of the letters, and you can tell the handwriting is very clearly, I would call, staged, but it is very distinct in how it is staged.
Yes.
Yeah.
It makes you sick. It is disgusting. So he taunts these families for several years after.
Yes.
So, that's where Unsolved Mysteries leaves us. Okay? Are you ready for your update?
Yeah.
Solved.
Really?
All right. First off, let me give you some things that they didn't tell us about the deaths.
Okay.
Tanya had been raped. She didn't have pants on.
Yeah.
And she was shot in the head. Jay had been found by Monroe, Washington. He was beaten with rocks, and this is why they think of the prison system. Cigarettes had been stuffed down his throat.
What?
Yeah. It was a gruesome crime.
Oh my goodness. So before you say anything, I'm gonna put in my theory. When I saw this, my first thought was, we are in the Pacific Northwest at this time of the decade. This has got to be tied to a serial killer. I don't know which one. I don't know if it's an infamous one or not, but that was my guess.
I actually thought it was the Green River Killer.
You did mention that, yeah.
But I know nothing about the Green River Killer and
except that he was in that area.
But that he worked. I think he was a little lower in Seattle and the Wash.
And he typically got rid of bodies around like water, which I guess the man's was. But I don't know if he ever. And I don't know off the top of my head. Don't know if he ever had a male victim.
Yeah, see, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
But
I just wanted to put that out there before we find out.
It wasn't him.
Well, it wasn't the Green River Killer. Yeah, I knew that.
And this is not a serial killer. This man has had 0 arrests. Actually, no, he had like minor, but 0 felonies. None.
There is no way that this was the one time he did this. There has got to be other victims.
Traced him, and he just had been found guilty in 2019. Okay? So, yeah.
I want to do a whole series on this guy.
William Earl Talbot II.
Ugh.
Okay? Let me just tell you the story, because just the story of how they caught him
is
great.
Okay.
Okay? I'm just looking at some of my... So, they got him. They had investigated this for almost 30 years with 0 leads. I read multiple articles. In one article, they interviewed the detective with the county that did catch him, and he said their list of suspects was over 200.
Good night.
They had investigated every single lead they could possibly go on.
Which for Seattle, this is a big police department with a lot of stuff.
It wasn't Seattle PD.
Oh, it wasn't Seattle PD.
Nope, it was the Snohomish County.
Okay, so the county was investigating this. Okay.
Yeah, or the Skagit. I can't remember which county sheriff.
Okay.
And I was just going to give a shout out. The man that solved it was Detective Jim Schwarf.
Jim Schwart?
Schwarf.
Good job, Jim.
Yeah, he was relentless on it. He said he'd been investigating for a couple decades.
Anyone knows Jim, buy him a cup of coffee.
Yeah, he coffee for life.
Okay.
Anyways, you know more about this, but the Golden State Killer. Was identified with genealogy
familiar DNA.
So in the van was Tanya's pants.
Okay.
She was found without her pants.
Mm-hmm.
The van was miles away. Both bodies were found north of Seattle.
Okay.
So, anyways, and on her and her pants were male fluids left behind.
Okay.
The police kept that.
Smart.
And this guy had even years before, I guess there was some technology coming out that you could take this DNA and create a composite. He tried that.
Yeah. So there's a couple forms. So there's the DNA that, you can do that. And it can limit to the fact that what kind of potential eye and hair. So it can kind of.
He tried doing that. Yeah. Right? That didn't really.
I'm going to guess he also probably put it into CODIS to try to.
Obviously, he was identified as individual A, and they had been running this DNA for years. And the problem
that a lot of people don't realize with DNA, and you might not even know this, is DNA is burned up and when done whenever you test it. So if there's only a 3 centimeter by 2 centimeter stain, that's all you have to work with. It's not like you put in the code and it's there permanently.
Well, and they said so.
So you have to be very selective on when you choose to run it.
The DNA on her and the DNA found in the pants in the van 90 meters were the same.
Okay.
So they knew they were working with the same person.
Got it.
Right? Anyways, so when the Golden State Killer was identified through that, this detective goes, I wonder if we can do this. Mm-hmm. He contacts this lady.
Yeah, there is a couple of companies that do this.
And this was in Virginia.
Very expensive. Yeah.
It was in Virginia. He had contacted her in April. Can't remember exactly, on a Friday. Mm-hmm. Gives it to her and she goes, yeah, let me do it. Boom, boom, boom. Runs it in the GED match, which is a genealogy. You'll be able to find your
ancestry through that.
And try to find people that you might be related to around. She gets a hit on a second cousin. There's a lady in Washington who had submitted all that because she was trying to find her family in the area.
Mine is on there.
Yeah.
When I did mine, you have to consent to it now, which I don't know if you had to before then, but when you do any of these ancestry tests, you have to consent for your DNA to be uploaded to this as well.
This lady said she submitted it on Friday night because I read an article of her getting interviewed.
Yeah.
And by Saturday morning, she had a hit on 2 second cousins.
Okay.
One wanted to stay anonymous. This other lady gave interviews. Seems like a really nice lady. She was happy that her DNA helped find the killer, even though the killer is related to her.
Yeah.
But second cousin, whatever, right? So, yeah. So the lady finds this second cousin, traces it back to his great-grandparents. She's able, she says, within 2 hours to identify a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Calls the detective Monday morning. Is like, I got you a name.
Good night.
And he's like, no way. 31 years and I've been this case.
And she got it in 48 hours.
So they tail him. And they said he had never been a suspect. Ever. He was on 0 forms.
What
They had
in the
no
world?
idea of this guy. And he lived, at the time of the murder, 7 miles away from where the body was found. But it's a big place.
Yeah.
You know. Anyways, they tail him. He's a truck driver at the time. And they're all they have is just a name.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they have to acquire DNA from him to confirm.
He opens his truck door and drops a coffee cup, and the police snatch that up.
Once it's trash, it's
Send
public
it to the
domain.
state lab, and boom. Yep, we got a match. And he said they instantly, within a week or whatever, they arrested him and charged him with both murders.
Oh my goodness. So, and that's what you were saying. So even though the Golden State Killer, the technology was used on that first, he was the first one ever charged and convicted. This William guy was.
Using that technology was used.
Because his stuff went to court
went to trial.
faster.
He went to trial within a year.
Yeah.
That was in 2018. He went to trial in 2019 and was found guilty.
So he went to full on trial.
Yeah. And I guess the state lab they didn't use it in court, but they had tested it and found his DNA on the zip ties.
Oh, too. Yeah. Okay. So, this guy did it.
He admits in court, or to his, that he says, oh, no, yeah, I had an interaction with
Consensual
her.
interaction?
But it was consensual.
Of course it was.
So someone must have came after and killed them. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Idiot.
He was 24 at the time. He's now 50-something years
Gross.
old.
You cannot tell me that this man over 30 years did not do this to somebody else, or that these were his first victims.
So after that, he was never arrested for anything. I'm not saying he hasn't, but yeah. Anyways, 2021, his conviction was overturned by an appeals court.
For what?
They said that one of the jurors was biased.
Okay.
That she admitted to being biased before, and that she should have never been let on to the jury.
Okay.
Went to the Washington State Supreme Court in 2022, and they said, and they upheld this conviction.
Yeah.
He is still in prison to this day. He's still trying to appeal.
Of course he is.
Doesn't matter.
Dude, your DNA is on everything. So I'm going to need you to shut up and sit down.
Yeah.
Unless you want to tell us what other things you've done, we don't want to hear from you.
I just shout out to this detective.
Yeah.
He saw that, and he fought for a 30-year-old case.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it quickly.
Yeah.
So
I really
awesome
think
job.
there is a podcast called, I think it's called Season of Justice, but it is their belief that we're entering a new era of justice through catching old cases or solving old cases through this technology. It is in whoever Rubik's cubed this idea is genius.
Well, this lady I mean,
just the very first time of realizing, like, oh, wait, I can figure out who the second cousin is based on this DNA. And this thread of it makes it a male cousin of whoever, like.
Well, she explains it. This was a second cousin, but it wasn't an exact.
Yeah, it's not an exact match, but they're able to see who they can go back and back and back.
So she found that a great-grandparent's line then breaks off. And now there's a male that lives in the area that fits that age frame.
Yep.
And there was only one.
Yeah.
So
and I want to say with the Golden State Killer, I think they were able to down to 2 or 3 men that were all cousins that all could have been it. And so they ended up trailing, same thing, all three of these men pulling garbage cans and stuff like that.
And that was the thing is all they did was say, hey, we've got a name for you.
Yeah.
You might want to look at him. So they followed him. They grabbed a piece of trash. You threw it away. It's perfectly
Once
legal
it's
to grab
trash,
it.
it's legal for the police. And there's a lot of people that don't think that that should be the case,
They
but
said
it's
the
garbage.
detectives had to jump out in the street, and it's that coffee cup's blowing down the street, and they're chasing it, and they grabbed it.
Yeah.
You know, it fell out of his truck.
They're just hoping like no one runs over it or something.
Yeah, he says that he was at a stoplight, and he'd open his door for something, and
Also,
it fell out.
don't litter. Not that I'm giving away secrets to murderers, but how about you don't throw your coffee cup out, dude?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's a terrible crime. Awful.
Yeah.
And this is the crazy
People were
part.
just a young couple in love with each other, wanting to get away for a romantic one-night rendezvous to feel like adults for just the smallest amount of time.
It is crazy that this guy sees this opportunity. And
so we don't even know what happened that night fully because he admits that he was intimate, apparently consensual with the boyfriend around.
yeah, that's not.
No, that's not how it happened, my
No.
dude.
Obviously, but it's terrible because he stumbles in, and clearly he was prepared to do what he was about to do.
He knew what he was going out to do that
Commits
night.
this heinous crime, dumps these bodies, thankfully. Unfortunately, he got to live 30 years more without, but thankfully, justice was served.
And there had, whether or not it was a murder or not, there's got to be other victims that he's assaulted in some kind of way. You are not a violent predator sexually and do this once and get away with it.
Yeah.
And not think, I can do this again.
And I'll say, I guess the lady who was his second cousin has submitted, because she just said she wanted to know her family around. She went to his sentencing and sat with the victim's family.
Good.
And was like,
I would do the same
she
thing.
Goes, yeah, he might be my second cousin, but I'm glad that I submitted my DNA.
One of the reasons I submitted my DNA was for that exact reason. If I can ever help solve a case, I want to be able to do that for a victim.
So,
yeah.
Shout out to her. Shout out to all the detectives.
And the scientists that figured out that this could be used. And like I said, I think I was telling you, it'll be interesting because there is a lot of this happened pre-COVID, like right before COVID, and then COVID happened, and our court systems are still trying to catch up. And not that legislation ever happens quickly anyways, but there is talk about putting some restrictions and boundaries on familiar DNA, which would be heartbreaking because it is such a powerful tool.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but really glad that it worked out for these people, and the man was finally caught.
Okay. Well, that is the Unsolved Mysteries part of our show. Again, social media, rate and review, follow us. And now we are going to go on to the couples portion of our podcast to wrap things up. If you don't want to hang around and hear me ask Ben stupid question, then maybe not stupid, silly question, fun, lighthearted question, then feel free to exit stage right, and we'll see you next week. And for all those that stick around, Ben, are you ready for your question?
Ready.
Okay. Is there a hobby or something of any sorts that you loved and did actively as a child or youth of any age that you don't do anymore but would love and wish you could pick it up and do it again? And it doesn't have to be a skill. It could be any sort of thing.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
There's lots.
Yeah.
I actually have lots.
Okay.
I mean, I loved playing with Ninja Turtle action figures. I wish I still did that, But no, I'll give you a couple things.
Okay.
Going back to what I already talked about earlier, I played baseball as a kid, and I quit in high school. I wish I never did.
Yeah.
I love baseball. I wish I would have stuck with it. It's the greatest sport.
It brought you joy.
It's brought me so much joy.
Yeah.
But as you get older, competition, and I was never the best baseball player. I was a very mediocre. And part of that was but probably just because I didn't put the time and effort and the discipline into it. I wish I would have.
Fair. You were
looking back now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. I wouldn't be a 40-year-old still playing baseball.
Yeah.
But, well, on that note, if there was anything that I wish I would have stuck with that I could still be doing today as a 40-year-old, I wish I would have never quit playing the piano.
Oh.
My mom forced all of us to take piano lessons. And I took piano lessons as a kid for like a year or two.
Okay.
And then I didn't want to anymore.
Yeah.
And I went to the drums later on. But I wish to this day I knew how to play the piano. I wish I would have kept that skill. I wish I would have stuck with it. I might have not loved it at the time.
I don't think many kids do unless you're some prodigy where it comes easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just... There's so many things I dabbled in when I was younger, and as you get older, you wish you would have stuck with stuff so that you would at least still have that skill a little bit as an adult. I mean, now I have whatever I did learn, I can't remember, you know, and that's so. And now you're trying to learn new things as an adult. Very possible, and we should never quit. Yeah. Ever, ever, ever. But it is harder. So, what about you?
Plain imagination.
Plain imagination. That is great.
And here's the thing. I have dyslexia and ADHD, so I already have a very inquisitive as far as like, I feel like my mind is just glitter and dreams a lot of the times. And so I'm a big daydreamer. But when I was younger, it got me into trouble a lot in school, right? Yeah. Daydreaming and playing pretend and imagination and sort of stuff like that, and not obviously focusing on like schoolwork and things. So it makes me sad to think that a lot of that was lost because in my mind it got associated with being lazy or being bad. Yeah. And I mean, I used to go, because I used to walk to and from school. I always lived close enough until I was in high school to walk to or from school. And I would have entire movie plots or plays or what ifs or imaginations of all kinds of things. I'd make up fairy tales. I'd do all kinds of stuff. And I used to love to play imagination and pretend. And I didn't even, I didn't play with a lot of Barbies or action figures. It would literally just be me in my own mind. Or with some of my friends who were really good with it, we would dress up and pretend to be fairies or all kinds of stuff. And I wish that was something that I feel like is a lost art form that I don't know
100%.
How I would get back because of, honestly, streaming and technology and social media. Your mind never has to think for itself. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, we could go into a long conversation about that.
So you just, I don't know. And I think a lot of people that know me, I still to this day, if you invite me to a costume party, I'm going to dress up. If there's an opportunity for me to wear glitter places, I'm going to. And I get made fun of as an adult for being
one thing I love about
eccentric in those sorts of things. And that when I do go all in with something like that, whether it's creative and it's whimsical or whatever, I for sure go over the top. And I'm grateful that in the last several years of my life, I'm more comfortable with that. It was something I think I stifled and was embarrassed by or tried to put in a box because I was worried that my perception of how people would perceive me or potentially it makes other people uncomfortable that I'm willing to show up in a unicorn blow-up costume and walk around downtown and in a bar crawl with my friends and make sure they get home safely. Whatever it I don't care. I'll dress up and act a fool. But it's taken me, I didn't do that for a long time. And while I don't think I have, the ability to play pretend and imagination like I used to, I for sure will dress up and act fool with you anywhere. anytime. But that's just something I've started redoing kind of a little bit in the last couple of years of my life. And I think when you hear people talking about, 40s and 50s being some of the best years of their life, I think it's just because you start to realize, yeah, I don't want to put on a facade for you anymore because that's boring.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, or I'm not going to try to dim my glitter because it makes you uncomfortable because that's a you problem. Anyways, so yeah, I was thinking about this today when I thought of this question is I really just remember being able to quiet my mind very easily and lay on my bed and almost meditate myself into these imagination where I could see it, I could hear it, I was a part of it, I can visualize it, and it would almost be like a full-on dream experience, but I was awake and daydreaming. And I worry sometimes that I've lost the ability to do that fully just because we don't ever quiet our minds very often.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
I like that answer. That's a better answer than mine. I like that.
I mean, of course, and I did gymnastics and ballet and all of that. And of course, I got to the point where I was offered to be on point and I wanted to do cheer and hip hop instead, which is great and tons of fun. But man, the mastery of point ballet is, I kick myself for not choosing that path. And I was an amazing gymnast and I gave that up because it's hard.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fun at times. And you're at the age you just, anyways, yeah. So there's a ton of stuff like that. But I think that's the biggest thing, like childhood whimsical stuff that I wish was still actively part of my day. And I still want a pink Barbie Jeep.
Oh, there you go.
So, okay. All right, guys, that is our show. Please make sure to check in with us next week where Ben and I recap one of the original gateway drugs into true crime.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Bye.